Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. I am back doing a Friday Reads. If you aren't aware or you missed it or whatever, I did an August wrap up and I put that up on Monday. I didn't do a video last week because I didn't have the energy for it, but then since it was a long weekend, I took advantage of it and did basically an August wrap up talking about all the books, obviously, that I read in August. Since I didn't do any Friday Reads in August, but I mentioned in that video I wanted to get back into doing Friday Reads, so here I am. I am going to be talking about all of the books that I've read so far in September. It's not a lot of books, but it is a couple of books, so, just kicking things off at a very steady pace. First up, I have Beach Read by Emily Henry. I feel like this is a book that has taken BookTube specifically by storm. A lot of people that I feel like don't typically read contemporary romance books have picked this book up, which I find to just be interesting in general as just an anecdote of the way people's reading is going this year. And since there were so many people who were picking it up and enjoying it, I figured I would give it a try. So in this story, you are following this character named January whose father has recently passed away, and after her father passed away, she finds out that her father had this secret beach house, and it was basically where him and his mistress used to meet up to, do affair stuff. That's a weird way to phrase it. But she didn't know, obviously, that her father had this house, that he had an affair on her mother, all this stuff. And so she was completely devastated by that because she basically thought her parents were the epitome of a happily ever after story. She's also a romance writer and she's basically super down. She is running out of money and she is basically on deadline for another story, but now that she no longer believes in happily ever afters due to everything that happened with her parents, she's not really sure if she can write romance anymore. So she ends up basically moving into this beach house, partially to isolate herself so she can write, partially because again she's running out of money and she needs a place to live. Next door to her is this guy named Augustus or Gus, who January actually knew in college. They were part of the same creative writing program, but Gus is a serious literary fiction writer. And so the two, after having a little bit of a rocky start, basically end up challenging each other to writing books in each other's genres. So Gus has to write a romance novel, January has to write a literary fiction novel, and then there's sort of this additional layer added to it where they're going to have homework or study sessions or something along those lines. So on Fridays, they go out and do research that Gus would do for his literary fiction book. And then on Saturdays, they basically do things that will help inspire the romance novel that Gus has to write. And obviously things evolve from there because it's a contemporary romance novel. So again, like I said earlier, I picked this up because everyone's been talking about it. And overall, I did enjoy it in the moment for the most part. I think I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. It's a pretty standard romance novel. And I feel there was nothing in this book that was necessarily surprising, but I did find that in the moment I was very compelled by the two of them. I think the best part of this book is really the chemistry between these two main characters. I think that Emily Henry does a really good job of just their banter and the way that they spend time together, the way they get to know each other. I felt the level of complications in this book are pretty low. Anyone who reads contemporary romance or romance in general, sometimes the conflicts feel kind of contrived, and in this one not so much in my opinion. But I didn't really fall in love with this book. I think it's partially because January as a character wasn't that appealing to me. She feels really, really young and immature, and I'm not sure exactly how old she's supposed to be, but she's in her 20s, and I think in her late 20s. Also, anything outside of the two of them together just fell really flat. So everything dealing with their writing and their stories didn't really work that well, in my opinion. And I feel if that was fleshed out a little bit better, it might have worked out a little bit better, but I just felt completely uninterested in sort of the books that they were writing or anything like that. I think it's also just because they rush through all of that stuff. It's one moment January is having a really hard time writing anything, and then the next moment she's immediately inspired and is busting out words and stuff like that, and it didn't really work. That part of the book wasn't developed, which I guess if you're writing a contemporary romance, it's much better to have the romance developed than the sort of secondary plot. But for me, that makes it just a 3-star book. So yeah, I mean, it was fine. I wouldn't say run out and read this book, but if you've been intrigued by it, it's not bad. I also ended up reading Here For It by R. Eric Thomas. This is a collection of essays, and R. Eric Thomas is probably best well known for writing this column for Elle.com. I have to admit, I haven't really read anything that he's written before. I'm like vaguely aware of him just because like he gets retweeted into my timeline and stuff like that on Twitter. But other than that, I didn't really know too much about it, but I had seen people reading this book and enjoying it, so I got it. A physical copy from the library, but someone actually mentioned on my Instagram that I should listen to the audiobook of it, and I was like, actually, that sounds fantastic. And I'm really glad I listened to the audiobook version of this. The way these essays are written is like super, super casually, and it's like so casual that if I was reading it in physical form, it probably would have bothered me, but listening to it in audiobook form was perfect because it basically just sounds like R. Eric Thomas is talking to you. The essays in here, kind of like in a lot of essay collections, are really hit or miss. He talks a lot about like finding his identity in different things, how he basically like didn't identify with other Black people for a long time because he didn't feel like Black enough, and then also like him finding his identity, realizing that he's gay and coming to terms with that, and also him like being a Christian and dealing with those potential conflicts. R. Eric Thomas is really funny and he's really good at telling stories, but some of the stories just felt like story for the sake of story, and sometimes while I was listening to the audiobook, I couldn't exactly tell that an essay was over, or there would be parts where like I thought an essay might be over, but actually it wasn't. He was just kind of jumping around a bit, and again, I think that has to do more with the medium. I'm sure there were like paragraph breaks and markers and stuff like that at those points that would have made it easier to kind of understand the structure of things, but like listening to it, sometimes I was like, oh, the essay's over and we're talking about something completely different. And again, these essays are written like super casually, so sometimes it does feel just like a little bit superficial. The way that he writes, he has like a lot of like side notes and side comments and stuff like that, which again, I was mostly okay with on audio, but like it gets to be a little bit much in my opinion, but you might personally enjoy those things in your essay collection, so it's one of those, your mileage may vary depending on what your preference is. But there were like a lot of things in here that I found to be like really beautiful and really poignant. There was like one comment that I was on a walk listening to this and I literally burst out laughing, where he's talking about his faith and he's talking about how he was once dating someone who basically loved horror stuff, and he wasn't sure if this guy was like a devil worshiper, and he said something like, there's two things that are the enemies to all Christians, and that's the devil and Pontius Pilate. And like that line is like just so out of nowhere, but also just like so funny, especially if you are a Christian or have grown up in the church and stuff like that. Like it's just like little comments like that where it just really, really appealed to me. So yeah, again, I feel like the essays in here can be pretty hit or miss. There are some really beautiful ones in here, but I do think like the front end of it, it takes a while to like really get into the way that he writes if you aren't familiar with his writing and the stories that he's telling and stuff like that. But by like the middle of the collection, I was kind of in the groove of it, and I felt like he started getting into deeper topics and stuff like that, and that's really what appeals to me. So yeah, another book that's like 3 stars, maybe 3.5. It was fun, it was light, it had some good points and things like that. So I definitely didn't hate reading this book, but I wouldn't say it's like one of my favorite essay collections or anything like that. All right, and then finally, I'm just going to mention this briefly because I'm going to do a whole separate book review on it, but I read Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi. Spoiler alert, I really enjoyed it, but this book is completely different from Homegoing in basically every single way possible. So I'll just like leave it at that, saying that I really enjoyed this book. But if you are someone who really enjoyed Homegoing and you haven't picked this up yet, just know that this book isn't Homegoing. So you kind of have to accept this book for what it is, and then you'll really enjoy it. But if you go into it wanting another Homegoing, you'll be disappointed. But yeah, we're already recorded a full review of this book, and that'll be going up on Monday, so everyone can look forward to that if you are interested in full thoughts. So yeah, that's everything that I finished so far this month. I am currently in the middle of what feels like a million different things, and I think I'm just like in that space where I'm finishing books because they're due back at the library, but I don't know necessarily if I want to like full on finish them, and also I can't really tell what my mood is at the moment, so I'm trying to like figure that out as well. I'm currently reading on ebook Mexican Gothic because again, I have this from the library and it's due back. I'll probably finish that one, and then I'm also listening to When No One Is Watching, which is the new thriller by Alyssa Cole, and that one I'm listening to on audiobook, so I basically only listen to it when I go for a walk. But like This is also a terrible book to listen to while going on walks because it makes you super paranoid, or it makes me super paranoid. So I guess that means it's a good book. So yeah, that's everything I have for this week. A little bit of a shorter video just because I haven't been reading quite as much, but I feel like I'm really getting into books again in a way that I haven't before, possibly because the temperature is dropping, so it makes me want to be all like cozy. I'm wearing a sweatshirt, I want to be under a blanket and reading a book and stuff like that. So yeah, let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of the books I mentioned here today, or feel free to let me know what you've been reading lately and if you are enjoying any of those books. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.